one that no one saw coming because death arrived invisible. The Eichmess, a chemical plant, sat on the outskirts of town, producing trichlorophenol, a compound used to make disinfectants and pesticides. Inside one of its reactors, a chain reaction went out of control. Pressure built rapidly, and then, with a violent hiss, a safety valve burst open, releasing a massive cloud of gas into the sky. The gas drifted silently over the countryside. There was no explosion, no fire, no noise. People looked up, saw nothing, and carried on with their day. But in that cloud was dioxin, one of the most toxic substances known to science, a chemical so potent that microscopic traces can alter human DNA. Hours later, the first signs appeared. Birds fell from the sky, leaves curled black, cats and dogs died in the streets. And then, the children. Parents rushed their kids to hospitals as mysterious rashes appeared on their faces and arms. Large, blistered sores that burned and bled. Doctors were baffled until they realized what they were seeing: chloracne, a skin condition caused by chemical poisoning. It took nearly a week before authorities admitted what had happened. By then, the damage was irreversible. The cloud had spread across a several-kilometer radius, contaminating soil, gardens, and farms. Milk, fruits, and vegetables were declared unsafe. Entire neighborhoods were evacuated, their homes abandoned. Thousands of animals, goats, pigs, chickens, were slaughtered to prevent contaminated meat from entering the food chain. The people of Seveso lived in fear, not just of what they could see, but of what they couldn't. Dioxin doesn't disappear. It lingers in soil and human tissue for decades. Women were advised not to have children for years after exposure, fearing birth defects, and the psychological scars ran even deeper than the physical ones. In the years that followed, doctors documented elevated rates of cancer, liver damage, and reproductive disorders among Seveso residents. The disaster transformed how Europe viewed industrial safety. Outrage turned into reform. By 1982, the European Union passed the Seveso Directive, a comprehensive law requiring all chemical plants to implement strict safety protocols, emergency plans, and community evacuation systems. To this day, any facility handling hazardous materials in Europe is still governed by those same rules, named after the quiet town that was poisoned by the wind. The Seveso disaster didn't explode like Chernobyl or Bhopal. It didn't leave flames or shattered buildings. Its terror was invisible, drifting, and silent. It showed that the greatest industrial dangers aren't always the loudest ones. Sometimes, the most devastating killers arrive on a calm summer afternoon, carried gently through the air. Seveso remains a haunting symbol of modern progress. A town that learned the hard way that the line between creation and contamination is thinner than smoke. Minamata, the poisoned sea. In the 1950s, the Japanese fishing town of Minamata lived and breathed by the water. But the sea that fed them was slowly killing them. For years, the Chiso Corporation had been dumping methylmercury into the bay, a potent neurotoxin invisible in the water, but deadly inside living things. Fish absorbed it, then cats, then people. At first, villagers noticed cats acting strangely, twitching, stumbling, convulsing before dying. Soon, people began showing the same symptoms: numbness, tremors, slurred speech, blindness. Babies were born with severe deformities and brain damage. It took years before the company admitted responsibility, and even longer before victims received compensation. By then, thousands had suffered irreversible neurological damage. Today, Minamata disease stands as a symbol of environmental negligence, a warning that what we dump into nature always finds its way back. The thalidomide tragedy. In the late 1950s, the world was entering an age of optimism. Science was advancing faster than ever. New medicines, vaccines, and technologies promised to eliminate the suffering of the past. It was an era that believed in progress and trusted those who sold it. So, when a German pharmaceutical company introduced a new drug called thalidomide, doctors called it a miracle. The small, harmless, Looking pills promised to cure insomnia, anxiety, and especially morning sickness, the nausea that plagued pregnant women during early pregnancy. It was marketed as perfectly safe. The company claimed there was no risk of overdose, no side effects, and certainly no danger to unborn children. In a time when medical oversight was minimal, thalidomide was handed out like candy, prescribed in Europe, Australia, and parts of North America, and sold over the counter in some countries without a prescription at all. Women trusted their doctors. Doctors trusted the companies, and the companies trusted the profits. Then the horror began. By the early 1960s, hospitals across Germany, Britain, and Japan began to notice a disturbing pattern. Babies were being born with shocking deformities, arms that ended in tiny flippers, legs fused together, missing fingers, ears, and eyes, internal organs malformed beyond recognition. Some infants lived only hours, others survived but would spend their lives in wheelchairs or hospitals. Doctors were baffled. At first, they suspected infection or radiation exposure, anything but a drug supposedly safe enough to take during pregnancy. But then, a few courageous physicians began connecting the dots. The mothers of these children all had one thing in common: they had taken thalidomide. The evidence grew overwhelming. The drug, it turned out, interfered with the development of blood vessels in embryos. When taken during early pregnancy, even for a short time, it stopped limbs and organs from forming properly. Still, the pharmaceutical companies refused to take responsibility. They insisted it was coincidence. They questioned the science. They hired lawyers to silence doctors. And all the while, new mothers continued to take the pills, unaware of the nightmare waiting for their unborn children. By the time thalidomide was finally pulled from shelves in 1961, the damage was irreversible. More than 10,000 children in 46 countries had been affected. Thousands more likely died before birth, their deformities unrecorded. The tragedy shattered public trust in medicine. The outrage that followed changed the world. Governments demanded answers. Lawsuits began to pile up, forcing pharmaceutical companies into the spotlight. The trials were ugly, revealing a web of greed, negligence, and scientific arrogance. But something powerful emerged from the ashes. Modern drug regulation was born. After thalidomide, every new medication faced rigorous testing, including mandatory studies on pregnant animals and far stricter human trials. The U.S. Food and Drug Administration tightened its review process, and other countries followed suit. No longer would a company's word be enough to declare a drug safe. Thalidomide left behind a generation of survivors. Men and women born without limbs, many of whom became activists, lawyers, and advocates for medical ethics. Their suffering forced the world to confront an uncomfortable truth: that blind faith in science, without accountability, is as dangerous as ignorance. The thalidomide tragedy was not just a medical disaster. It was a moral one, a warning written in scars. It was too late for one generation of children, but their pain built the foundation of modern safety standards. Because of them, millions of others were spared the same fate. The Bhopal gas tragedy, December 2, 1984, Bhopal, India. In the dead of night, a faint hissing sound began echoing through the quiet streets surrounding the Union Carbide pesticide plant. Few paid attention. The air smelled faintly of metal and burning chili, strange, but not alarming. Then, within minutes, the city began to choke. A dense, invisible cloud of methyl isocyanate gas, MAMIC, had begun leaking from one of the plant's massive storage tanks. The gas spread quickly, hugging the ground, rolling silently into the crowded slums that surrounded the factory. People woke up coughing, eyes burning, lungs on fire.